Hey guys, this is a short clip to discuss ClickUp Tasks. And ClickUp Tasks are really where the action happens. So when we think about tasks, that's where we do most of the work and most of the communication happens in that space. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that. We handle tasks as tasks themselves. I mean, so tasks are where we assign work, but it's also where we store information, basically on cards. So if you think about ClickUp, it's just a big fat database with a bunch of tasks in it. We can use that database to store information related to information we want to keep, like app access or domain access that we want to retrieve later, and also task information, which is more temporary and allows us to communicate about a specific task, work it back and forth, hand it back, talk about it, add files, communicate to the client via email or comments, depending on how we set the permissions, and then ultimately close that task, track time, make estimates about the time we need for the task. So tasks are really an important, if not the most important aspect of ClickUp. So in this clip, what I'm going to discuss is how to find a task, how you get notified about a task, the various places where you'll be informed that a task is available for you, how to open a task so that there's no question there, and then I'll introduce the task interface. So how to find a task. So tasks come to you in a couple of different ways. They can be available to you in this notifications window, which you can see I have up here, and this is really where I start my day to go make sure and see what's available for the various clients or the various tasks and where we stand on those. So this is an important part of my workflow, and we do recommend that you check it twice a day once you have access. You can also get tasks assigned to you through email. Let's see. So there can be a daily summary that you can send to yourself, which has a list of tasks that are open, but you can also be notified of individual tasks. Let's see if I can find one that's still open. Go. And here we go. So you'll see a task assigned to me here where Kelvin has reassigned a task to me to work on. And so in terms of how you might access those tasks, basically you can just click on it if you're going from email, and that opens up the task itself so you can see all the communications that go into there. You can also, from notifications, works exactly the same way. So I can go into a task this way with information stacked in here, and we'll talk about the interface in a second. And then the other way, of course, is to simply navigate in spaces that are available to you. And spaces contain lists, which then in turn contain tasks. So let's go to a good place to go to an example. So we have a camp logo. So this is a list with information available here in the form of a bunch of tasks. And you'll notice those tasks are organized by status. We'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. So again, I just click on that, and that opens a task, and then I can see what's happening with that task. So that's basically the overview of tasks, and at this point what I'll do is just cover quickly the information within the task to just introduce the interface to you, which we'll dive into in more detail in other clips to cover items such as status, assignments, the various things you can do with a task, time tracking, which is very important, time estimation, which we use as an index to sort of give us an idea, due dates, and then also kind of jump in here. Here's the task name. We use that as sort of the primary tool to knit tasks to folders or other information that we have outside of ClickUp, but it's also just a good way to find things. And typically what you'll see on a name of any task will be the client that's associated with. So we have various clients, and those are always indicated by a 4-letter code. LUMI, which are internal tasks, are indicated with the 4-letter code LUMI. Our sister company, we also do tasks for that. That's indicated by the 4-letter code LAMB, L-A-M-B, for Lambda. So these names are important. It's a good way to find things, and that's how you'll see these tasks organized here by name. This is a description field below this, and this just describes the task to you. This is where the basic non-dynamic information, the information that is just associated with that task, either in terms of direction or information that you may need to refer back to, which is a little bit easier to navigate than trying to scroll up and down through comments. There are a series of fields. These are custom fields associated with various tasks. Those are below the description field, this big fat text field. And those are kind of structured data that we bring in or assign to the task. And you'll find those, as you work on different tasks for different clients, different projects, those will vary considerably. The ones the fields that are populated will show, and then there's also empty fields. So if you need to add information associated with the task after the task has been created, you can always add that information here. There are subtasks, which are basically just tasklets. They're just the same as a task. They may be, subtasks, tasks that are associated with the file that need to be worked. That's typically what they are, and they will take on the characteristics of the task itself. So when you create a new subtask, edit that. Pop that open, and it'll have all these fields associated with it, and then it'll just be like a clean version of that original task. And then the breadcrumbs here so you can navigate back. It's not always apparent that that's the deal. And then I'm just going to remove this so I don't confuse things. There are comments that are assigned, so these comments can be assigned to various people within the organization. And then once those comments are completed or the task associated or applied by those assigned comments, you can just check that off and that considers it done. There are checklists that can be added to tasks, which are just what I said, checklists. We use them for some tasks. It's a pretty powerful tool just to keep reminders in there, and we often add them to templates. All the attachments. The attachments are really everything that's ever been attached in any comment or any email that's sent out from the task. So it's kind of nice. You can see the different generations of the work here. This is some logo design for a client. And then within the comments field, you can see everything here that's ever been said in terms of communication back and forth. You'll notice that once a comment's made, there can be replies that are sort of buried in there, so you need to be mindful that you need to check for these replies to see if there's information in there. Typically what will happen is if I'm working on this and there's a reply and I need to make sure that someone's aware of it, I will just assign that, as you can see here, I'll assign that to the designer or whoever's responsible for that task, and then they would work that, and typically what they would do is click on resolve, and that lets me know that it's done. Also from within the comments, so comments communicate internally. You can use those to communicate with anyone who's assigned to the task or is a watcher on the task, and I'll talk about that when I pop up here to this bar. But you can also send emails depending on your permissions, right? So most people don't have permissions. If you're a guest, you certainly don't have permissions to do this, but a few people do have permissions to send out emails. So emails can be sent, and more importantly, you can see those as a person working the task. You may see that in there, and very often what will happen is when those emails go out and replies come in, those replies will be additional direction, and those will get assigned back to the person working the task. As we saw here earlier in this reply where I just said, hey, their information replies here, like, hey, can we change this up? And then I've assigned that to the designer, and then he went ahead and made those changes, and then we send that back out. So that's kind of how that works in terms of back and forth. In terms of status, those are somewhat dependent on the program that we're working. We have a standard set, but those are often modified. In this case, this is just one that's been sent for review to the client to see where we're at. And then what we do is once it's set up for review, we assign that back to whoever owns the whoever made the task assignment to get that out to the client. And then once that's been, once the client returns the feedback, I would remove myself, add the designer back in, and so forth and so on. So we use a give and go on the assignments just to make sure that we've got the right person handling the task at any given time. And that can go back and forth, and there can be multiple people assigned to a task at the same time. So that's very flexible in that way. Going across here, status, this will automatically close the task, which isn't something that you would typically do. That's usually something that I do or Joy does, whoever's running the particular project that the task is associated with. Here you can see that there are different things that you can do. You can send an email to the task. So if there's an email traffic that didn't fall into ClickUp, you can easily send that email to the task, which is kind of nice. And once you click on that, it will just allow you to copy that, or you can ask to skip this in the future and then simply know that once you click on it, it will just copy that email link, and then you can go back in and email a task straight into it, straight from your file. So I could basically forward this email back into this task if I wanted to. But I won't. That's the big one, and then maybe you have to copy the link to the task itself. You can use that if you're, let's say you're chatting with someone and you need to get them involved in the process. You want to add them in, and I want to just give that link over to somebody else. I can do it like that, which is kind of handy. So if you're referencing it, or you just need to nudge someone in a chat window to go take a look at something, or you want to make sure that you want to double check that they've received that assignment, you can do that way. So those are the two things that really we mostly use this for. The other stuff is sort of getting deeper into ClickUp, and we'll cover that in a future clip. The time track is simply the creation date is creation date, nothing mysterious there. Time tracking is important. We'll cover that in detail, but just know that you can track time this way by clicking on the timer, and then you can also stop it from here. So that's the most reliable way to track time. And multiple people can track time on a task. As you can see here, 2 people tracking time, so that's no big deal. There are other ways to go edit this. You can go back in and make changes to this if you need to. For example, if you forget to turn the timer off, which happens pretty often, you can go back in and fix that if you need to. You can manually add time. If, for example, you started working on something, you forgot to start the time tracker. But those methods are fairly unreliable because people usually are pretty bad at estimating time, unless you happen to check the clock or it was backstopped by a call or something of that nature. Then you can always you can use this estimate. This is just a thumbnail estimate that we use to sort of benchmark what we want to allocate in terms of time for a task. But you can see here that that's been exceeded. There's no penalty for that or anything. It's just a way for us to sort of give ourselves some guidelines as we work. Due dates are pretty important. We want to respect those. Those can get modified. If, for example, they need to be pushed off, but allow the person who assigned the task to handle that. This invokes a Zoom meeting, which we typically don't use. This is for sprint points, and again, this is something we don't use at the moment. And then lastly, in terms of the interface along the top here, there's the watcher. So you can assign other people to be a watcher, but typically the people who are involved in the task are the ones who assigned it, created the task, or the person who is actually working the task. And then you can see ClickBot here because there are certain automations that we're using. And we just leave that on as a watcher. But you can assign other people to be a watcher, and they'll be notified when there are changes to the task. So that's pretty handy. In any case, that's the basic overview of the task. And we'll be diving into more detail on the interface and the nuances of the interface and the best practices that we use to operate tasks in ClickUp.